Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Legal Gym Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, we're going to be talking with my good friend and franchise lawyer, Josh Brown, about everything related to building your business the right way from the ground up. And for the show notes for today's episode, which will include all the links and resources for everything that we're going to be discussing today, make sure you head on over to hawthornelaw.net/Josh. All right, let's dive in. Now, before we get started, I just want to introduce my guest today. As I mentioned, it is Josh Brown. Josh is a franchise lawyer with the Taft Law Firm in Indianapolis. He combines his legal experience, business background, and entrepreneurial skills to help his clients grow their businesses with a particular focus on franchising and other licensing opportunities. He is passionate about helping entrepreneurs make smart franchise decisions and prepare for growth and expansion. Josh is a wealth of information when it comes to building a business the right way, and I'm so excited that he agreed to be on the show today. So welcome, Josh. Glad to have you here.
Well, thanks, Jim. Thrilled to be on your show. And, you and I, we kind of go back about 10 years now to when we both started our respective podcasts. But I'm a franchise lawyer. I'm based in Indiana in the Midwest. I help franchisees and franchisors with their franchise related legal issues. When I started doing this about 17 years ago, I was mostly focused on franchisees, helping people who were, looking to buy a franchise, looking to get out of a franchise, looking to expand and grow through buying more franchises, really because they were underrepresented, and they still are to a certain degree. And then over time, started working with franchisors as well. Franchisors began to reach out to me. People who were thinking about franchising their businesses reached out to me, and I really enjoy working with both sides. It's a little bit unique. Most franchise lawyers, pick a side. They either you represent franchisees or franchisors. I think it makes me a better attorney all the way around to represent both and understand, the key aspects for the entire relationship, not just one side of it. But have enjoyed it for the last 17 years, and certainly have enjoyed your podcast as well.
Oh, well, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that. And coming from you, who's really excelled in this space, and that's kind of one of the things we were talking about before we hopped on here. That means a lot. But so to talk to me, so you were practicing for a while. I think you mentioned like 7 years or so before you started your podcast, and you've been podcasting. And for those of you who don't know, share this, I'm sure, at the end of the show. You've got this podcast called Franchise Euphoria. You started that about 10 years ago, and so tell us about like how things have gone since then, and how your practice has evolved.
Yeah, I credit the podcast really for taking me from an Indiana based attorney primarily with my practice to nationwide and beyond. I'll never forget that when I first launched the podcast in 2013, you sit there and you go, is anybody listening? I mean, or am I just doing this for fun? And I was just doing it for fun. Candidly, I didn't think anybody would listen. And about 2 weeks after I launched, and I launched 3 episodes at the start, not just one episode. I was told by our mutual friend, John Lee Dumas, that, hey, launch with 3 episodes so that they have some more to go if they actually like the first one, which is good advice. So I launched with 3. And I want to say 2 weeks after, 3 weeks after, I'm sitting in my office and I get a call from Alabama. And this person from Alabama says, hey, I want you to review my franchise agreement. I said, well, sounds great. How'd you hear about me? And he said, oh, your podcast. And I thought, holy cow, somebody is listening. And so it was those sorts of things that kept happening that literally spawned me from, having a practice that was mostly folks in Indiana, to really getting people all over the country. I've had people from, Japan and Europe and I mean, other places reach out. And of course, as a lawyer, there's sometimes I can help and sometimes I can't based on where I'm licensed and what the issue and stuff is. But it is amazing the reach of the podcast. And it's amazing how evergreen it is. In other words, literally a month ago, Jim, I had somebody reach out to me for franchise help. And I said, well, how'd you hear about me? As I always ask. And they said, oh, I listened to your podcast. I listened to your first episode. I said, you listened to my first episode from 10 years ago, and now you're reaching out. So it's there. It's out there. It's in the digital sphere. And, that combined, with other social media and being in a niche practice, I think has gone a very long way to help me grow. And then on top of that, just you and I being lawyers and having a podcast is unique in and of itself. I think I was the first lawyer in the state of Indiana to have a podcast 10 years ago. And again, I did it just because I enjoyed podcasts myself. There really wasn't any other motive for doing it. It just happened to turn out that it's been, a great thing for my business, and has helped catapult it over all these years.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's good for anyone that's listening because we get a lot of people that listen who are either just starting out with online business and not quite sure what to do, and then obviously they want to know kind of how to legally protect that business, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a second. But I think for people who are just getting started, it's so important. You're such a valuable guest for me to have on, not only because you have all this industry knowledge about what it takes to really build a business, systematically, right? Because you help franchisors as well, but also because you have this experience building, I wouldn't say an online business, but you doing a podcast, which is how a lot of online businesses really get started and become well known.
Well, and I think too, well, to add to that, right? Podcast is one medium. It's a medium that you and I enjoy. It's a medium that now millions of other people enjoy. But what I would say is if you're starting your business and you prefer writing over speaking, then start a blog. Do something that involves writing. You don't have to feel like you have to go to the medium that's the hot medium. And I say that because I often, in the franchise world get asked, what's the hot franchise? And my response is, if I tell you what the hot franchise is, you're too late to the game. You're too late to the game, sometimes, but you also have to have a passion for what you're doing, and you have to have an interest in that. I enjoy speaking. I enjoy doing the podcast. You enjoy doing it. There's a lot of people out there who are starting a business, starting an online business, and they need to figure out for themselves what is it that they enjoy, what is it that they will stick to and do, and what is it that it'll come through as they do it, that not only are they knowledgeable about it and can help people and can help solve a problem, but they actually care. They're actually passionate about what they're doing. And that to me is what oftentimes differentiates in the online space, especially because, we can all Google anything we want and find a bunch of stuff out there. But we all know at this point that 80% of it's crap. But you got to kind of go through that to find the 20% that may actually help you. It's there, it's somewhere there. And usually it's the people who really care about what they're doing, because this stuff is hard. I mean, we all have busy lives. Jim, you've got a family. I've got a family. We've got, our jobs. We got all that stuff. And so if you don't care about what you're doing in the online space, and if you don't care about what platform you're speaking through, you're not going to stick to it. And if you're not going to stick to it, you might as well not start.
And you're going to get overwhelmed too, right? Because you're going to be trying to post in all these different places. I get all these people that reach out to me because of my YouTube channel, and they want to do YouTube, and they want to do a podcast, and they want to do a blog, and they want to do TikTok, and they want to do. It's like, no, just pick one and go with it. I mean, for years, I did just my YouTube channel, and I didn't even post things on my website. Now, I kind of regret that, to be perfectly honest, but because I think it would have helped.
Yeah, but that's easy. You shouldn't regret that. You shouldn't regret that. I'm gonna tell you why. The biggest thing that stops people from making their next move is the overwhelm that you talk about, by feeling like if they can't be everywhere, they have to be nowhere. I think that's a big mistake. And so what you did, which was great, what I've done and what others should really do is, we're not saying only go YouTube, only go TikTok, but start with one. Get your momentum going, get that going, get comfortable with it. And one of the things that's so interesting to me as all these different apps continue to evolve and develop is they're now easier and easier to connect with one another. So it's a lot easier now than it used to be to repurpose your content on a lot of different platforms. And so you should still start with one or two, but then understand that as you get comfortable with that, you can repurpose it on other platforms a lot easier than you otherwise could. But what you don't want to do is have overwhelm take over and sort of have the, paralysis from analysis and thinking, oh, I'm not going to do this as well as so and so, and get into that sort of bad comparison game. And just get on, talk to your people, have a point, focus on who it is you're trying to communicate with, what problem you're solving, and just build it step by step.
And so, which kind of leads me to, what I wanted to talk with you about today, excuse me. And that is, so if somebody comes to you and let's say they're either, I guess, would it make sense if they're a franchisor, or they probably come to you before they're a franchisor, right?
So both. So
okay.
Both. So yeah, before and then while they're a franchisor.
Well, there are different issues, right? A franchisee is coming to you and they're bringing a deal that's already in place, and they're trying to decide whether it makes sense. I'm guessing. But with a
or
franchisor,
trying to get out of a deal.
or trying to get out of course, there's got to be some of those. Um, but for you, if like, let's say somebody who wants to be a franchisor, they come to you, where are they at in the process, and what kind of, you're giving them a lot of practical and legal advice also, obviously, but kind of what do you talk to these people about when they first come to you? How do you, what is important for somebody who's thinking about this to know?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about turning your business into a franchise, which there's a whole lot of businesses out there that are, I mean, if you think about it, Jim, if you have, as an example, two, three, four locations of any kind of business, it can be a restaurant business, it can be senior care, it can be medically based, it can be whatever the case may be. Franchising touches all of that. At some point in time, you've likely thought about franchising, because franchising at the end of the day is a growth mechanism. It's one of several options that you can take. And so when somebody comes to me and they're at that stage, my advice to them is, let's make sure franchising is right for you first. Well, how do we do that? Well, let's take a look at your business. Let's take a look at where it is. Do you, and this will speak to you, Jim, do you have your marks protected? Because at the end of the day, a franchise is a lot about a brand, right? You got to build a brand. And in order to build a brand, you have to have protected marks, and you have to have your intellectual property protected. And you've got to have all these things in place so that somebody can't come in and, confuse the marketplace or rip you off or steal your stuff. So you got to make sure that you're legally protected from that perspective. You got to make sure that you've got contracts in place, depending on what the business is. Do you have the appropriate contracts in place? So when you have the contracts and you've got the marks, your branding elements of it, then you've got to tie into what are some of the things that are missing in what you're doing right now. And I've never talked to a business that is thinking about franchising where they don't have something missing. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong. It's because they've been busy running their business. And when you're looking at taking it from a running it, whether it's one, two, three locations, to now turning it into a franchise system, you have federal regulations you've got to deal with. You've got state regulations you got to deal with. And you've got to prepare a system in a way so that you actually add value to somebody who wants to buy into it, which will require you creating an operations manual. Most of these businesses don't have an operations manual. They might have a guide. They might have, notes on a piece of paper that, but most of the time it's in their head. And so getting the business from their head onto paper actually is one of the hardest things. But it's an exercise that I require that they do at that time before I'm going to turn them into a franchise. So I'm going to essentially do a due diligence on their business at the outset and find out where they are from a business perspective and where they need to go and what's that gap between. But then the second and equal piece to that, equally important, is, do they want to be a franchise? I mean, I'm not here to sell somebody on franchising in terms of like, it's not right for everybody. I'm the first to tell you that. If you don't want other people to come into your system and you want to cede some of that control over to them, even though as a franchisor, you have a hell of a lot of control over your system, you're still having somebody else run it independently under your guidelines, under the franchise disclosure document. If you're not comfortable with that, then you shouldn't be a franchisor. I mean, you should just grow corporately. Yeah, I mean, you really should. I mean, there are some businesses, there are some people, there are some entrepreneurs that should not be a franchisor. They should just do it corporately. The same goes for a franchisee. There are some people who should not be franchisees. They should just go and do their own thing. If you come into a franchise system and your first inclination is, how do I break this and make it better? Don't buy the franchise. Go start your own business. Seriously. Like that's not what franchising is all about. But on the franchisor side, I mean, that's often where I get people coming is, hey, I've been thinking about this. I've had 10 customers come in and ask me about franchising. I've got 4 people lined up who say they want to do it. What's the process? How long does it take? And then we work through that process. Okay. So but when I do that, that's also a time commitment too. And so I want people to understand that this is not something you just wake up on a Tuesday and go, yeah, I think I want a franchise. And then you're off to the race. I mean, this is a 6-month, 9-month, year-long process to do. And the best, I would say in large part, there's a few exceptions, but the best franchisors are the ones that take the time and really think about what's the value they're going to add at the start of the relationship to a franchisee, and then what's the continued value they're going to add a year down the road and on beyond that, so that you have franchisees who are coming into a system and they're actually learning something that can help them and give them the best opportunity for success. And then a year or so down the road, when they know how to run the business, they still value you as the franchisor. So you really got to think about those things along the way. Because I will tell you, Jim, people have short memories, whether it's franchisees or anybody in general. It's human nature. What have you done for me lately is what you deal with. So that's usually where I talk to people. Now, obviously, people come, they're already a franchise, maybe they're having legal issues or other issues as a result of that, but that's another conversation.
So that's actually much shorter than I thought. I thought you were going to say, 2 years for a franchise, especially when you led that by saying a lot of people don't have an operations manual and they have to develop that. I mean, that seems to me like that alone could take a great deal of time just to prepare. I would
It can.
imagine.
And most people don't know what it really is. I remember years ago when I said to somebody, "Hey, you really need an operations manual." They said, "Oh, I got a consultant and they're putting one together." I said, "Okay, great. I got to see it when it's done." And they sent it over to me. This isn't an operations manual for a franchise system. This is an operations manual for just like a one-off business, which is okay. And the consultant had charged a lot of money, and the client said, "Well, can you call the consultant and talk to him?" And I did. I called the consultant, very nice gentleman. And it was interesting because I said, this won't work. We can't use it. And he said, "Well, why don't you do it? And then why don't you help me do it? And, I won't charge the client or whatever." And that's what we ended up doing. It ended up working out just fine. But people have a differing idea of what an operations manual really is. Over these years, I've actually created a template, and I got to be very clear in what I say here about a template. I don't mean a plug and play template where all of a sudden I send you a template and in 3 minutes you've got an operations manual. Anybody who sells you that is just full of it. I mean, that's garbage. But this is a template in the sense of it covers every single area that you as an entrepreneur need to think about in terms of how your franchise system would run. And so you have to complete it, but you have to complete it in a very thoughtful way. And that can take a lot of time. But also, Jim, if people are coming to you and they've got 3-4 locations already operating, they have all this stuff somewhere. I mean, it's either in their head, it's halfway on paper, it's in notebooks that are, up in the attic or down in the basement. But what happens is, it's an amazing process, is when they start actually formulating their thoughts and putting it down into what will become the operations manual, they themselves identify their own gaps in their system. They start recognizing, oh, well, what happens here and what happens there? And then the combination of them doing that and me doing that leads to usually a pretty thorough ops manual. But these are documents that change as the times change. It's not like you set it and forget it. And so operations manuals you set based on, what you're doing right now, and you look at them, you review them, and you tweak them on a annual or semi-annual basis.
So these are more than just like a how-to manual. It's more than just a set of systems that people use in the business. Because when you first mentioned ops manual, I'm thinking, okay, it's all your SOPs put together in one little binder. But it's more than that, it sounds like to me.
Oh, it's more than that. I mean, if you're a restaurant, you got recipes in there, you got where you go and source it. You got all sorts of stuff. That depends on the business, what it is, but you've got to, it's a roadmap, but it's a detailed roadmap that in concert with your training and your other support as a franchisor is supposed to help a franchisee along the way.
So like probably marketing plans and, financial stuff and all sorts of things. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. What could people who are building in a business as just a solopreneur, maybe that they're not even thinking about franchising at this point, but maybe they think someday, maybe I could do that. What would you tell somebody who's just getting started? What can they take from all this in terms of how they're going to build and grow their business? What are the important things that they should be thinking about?
Yeah. So I always tell people, even if you don't franchise or have no desire to franchise, if you think about your business like a franchise and you grow it like a franchise, you'll be more efficient. You'll likely I can't guarantee this, but you'll likely be more profitable if you've got a good business model and there's a market for it. Because that's what a franchise is, right? I mean, it's systematizing, it's making things more efficient. What I tell people who are just getting started is there are basics that you need when you get started, and there are things you don't need until you've got the model proven out a little bit. I would say, and I do tell people at the start of whatever they're doing, number one, they got to make sure that their name, their brand, and whatever it is they're doing is protected. Because Jim, you see this, I know, all the time with trademarks and so forth. People get started in their business, they name it whatever the hell they want. They mistakenly think that because the URL was available, that means they have it trademarked. That's not the case. They don't. They just because GoDaddy has your URL available doesn't give you the rights to that if somebody else already has either common law rights or federal rights associated with the marks. And that's something that when you're just getting started, you have to do. And for those who are listening, or for those who are thinking, well, I just don't have the money to do that, well, then don't start the business. I, I'm being serious. Like I don't, I think like I just did a recent video on Instagram, where I'm talking about who do you need to consult before you buy a franchise. And I'm listening out, you need a franchise lawyer, you need a banker, you need an insurance professional, and you need an accountant. But at the end, it's like, well, if you can't afford any or all of those, then you cannot afford the opportunity. And again, I know people who we all hear the stories of, hey, I threw caution to the wind. I didn't have anything. I maxed out all the credit cards. I did all this other stuff. And it seems kind of glorious as a way to start a business. And I understand it. Trust me, I talked to a lot of people who have done that, and I have mad respect for them. I have a lot of respect for them. But that's not what you're aspiring to when you start a business. I mean, when you're starting a business, you want to do it the right way, because it's going to shorten your time frame to actually get over the hump and start making some money. And candidly, getting a trademark and making sure that you have a name that's protected like you do, Jim, is not that expensive. It's really not that expensive to do at all. And so that's why I say, if you can't afford that, you can't afford the business. Don't do it. Wait till you have more money to be able to do that. Additionally, I tell people you need basic agreements, you need basic contracts. And again, this all depends on what business you're doing. If you're just doing it if you're doing an online business, you obviously need all the document, you need the policies and so forth, terms and conditions, privacy policies, probably some sort of a consulting agreement, whatever the business, you need some basics here. And again, if you go to the right person, you go to yourself, Jim, or whoever, somebody should be able to put a package together where you can get the agreements, make sure you have the right insurance. You need insurance of some sort, for crying out loud. The number of people who start these businesses online and do it in their personal name, and they have no insurance, and then all of a sudden they get sued and they wonder, holy cow, I'm in a big giant mess, is unbelievable to me. You need to set up your business with a business. You need to not do it in your personal name. You need to protect the marks. You need basic contracts. You need insurance. You need an accountant. I'm telling you, you need an accountant to be able, even if you have the most basic of basic businesses, go to an accountant and spend a little amount of money to have them put together a break-even analysis. What's a break-even analysis? It's projections into a spreadsheet that conservatively tell you, and conservatively meaning, you're taking conservative numbers, right? And saying, if I do this, here are my costs, my anticipated costs, here's my anticipated revenue, and here's when I can expect to break even. And oh my gosh, here's when I can expect to actually make some money. And what that does is that gives you some point of comparison, and it brings you to reality to a certain degree, to so that your expectations match up with when you start the business. Because one of the other things I would say is, one of the biggest things that stops people from being successful when they start a business is that they run out of money too soon, or they give up too soon, and they're so close to getting over that hump. Now, sometimes you just have a bad business. You just have a bad business idea, and it's not going to work. But a lot of times you are close, but you're just not quite there. And when you have a break-even analysis, when you have some sort of tangible document in front of you, you have something to look at when things get stressful and things get hard. So those are the things I tell people to do. And, again, I'd love your commentary on this too a little bit, Jim. Is and this sounds harsh, but for those who can't afford to do that, well, then you can't afford to be in business. I mean, you can go throw caution to the wind. People do it all the time, and sometimes they're successful, but the percentages would say they're not successful. And if you can't do it that way at a very basic level, then I would say save up enough to where you can.
And so it's funny because I say the exact same things on my YouTube channel, and sometimes I'm a bit harsh with people like that. But having you say it too just kind of reinforces that that's the truth. And I agree with
But
you.
we've done this. We've done this. This is what I want to say. I'm not here as a talking head who hasn't done this. I mean, I launched my own franchise practice with no clients. I had none. I had nothing. I had a family. I had a newborn baby, a child, and I literally remember sitting there thinking, "Oh my gosh, if this doesn't happen, if that doesn't happen." But I had a plan in place. I remember I tested the market to see if franchising was going to be a good niche because I had no idea. I sort of thought, yeah, franchising, it's nichey. There's tons of franchises. I didn't really know any. I didn't know any franchise lawyers way back when I started this thing, and so I would go to these cocktail, events, networking events, whatever, wherever I'd go, and people would say, "Well, what kind of lawyer are you?" And I'd say, instead of saying I was a small business lawyer, I'd say I'm a franchise lawyer. Now, when I started doing that, I didn't have any franchise clients. So I'm not saying that's a recommended course to do, but the reason I was doing it was not to deceive people, but I had already read up on franchising. I already started to learn the law, but I was trying to gauge their reaction. That was my way to test the market. And I got such a great reaction from people who would say, "Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Like, I wish I would have known. My cousin Sarah just bought a franchise, and my uncle Joe just turned his business into a franchise." That happened over and over again. And then people would reach out to me 2 months after I met them for 10 minutes at a networking event and say, "Hey, I thought of you." And they'd send me an article on franchising. So it was from doing stuff like that that I realized, okay, there's a stickiness, to this market. And that's how it grew. But I want people to know, like, you and I, we're not sitting here as talking heads who, are in the ivory tower, and haven't lived and breathed and done this. I've done this. I've done this from scratch. And so what I want is for people to not make some of the mistakes I made. And what I want people to know is sort of, this is what you really need when you launch your business. And some of the other stuff you can just wait till later.
So there's something that you said there that I think is really interesting. I think it's really important for people to hear and understand. And that is when you went to these, and I'm going to kind of, you'll see where I'm going with this, but when you went to these networking events, you were telling people that you were not a small business lawyer. You were telling people you're a franchise lawyer. I see a lot of analogies. I don't know if that's the right word, but I see some similarities between that and what a lot of people are doing when they're building their online business. And I talk to these people, and and just like you do, I talk to a lot of people who want to we want to get their trademarks in place, who want to set up their LLCs, get their contracts, all those things. And I ask them, I always ask them, tell me about your business model. Tell me about what you're trying to do. And I'm amazed at the people who are like, "Oh, well, I've got this one idea over here that I'm going to do this one thing. And I've got this other thing over here. I want to do this other thing. And I got this other idea. And I'm probably going to need 3 LLCs for all this stuff." And I'm like, hold on, time out. Just pick one. You haven't done anything with any of them. Why are you doing all that? Just pick one idea. And I mean, do you see that too from people that have all these ideas of things they want to do? But what you did is you focused on one idea.
Yeah, for people who have all those ideas, they're not ready yet because they haven't made the decision on which way they want to go. That's what I found. So for people who have all these ideas, it's sort of like a moment where I say, stop. Okay, I get it. I think it's awesome. All of those ideas to me sound great. Maybe they don't. Maybe, and if they don't, I'll tell them. But let's assume that they all do. But yeah, focus on one because it's hard as hell to open one business. How are you going to open 3 essentially? So focus on one. The other thing I see is when people do that, it's always interesting. When people focus on that and then they have success, what you then sometimes will see is they'll go away from what made them successful in the first place. So all of a sudden they've had focus, they've had success, it's like, wow, this is really tied into something in the marketplace. People are reaching out, it's working. And then they kind of go astray from that, in part because they're trying to grow and expand and diversify. But I think also in part because maybe it's the next shiny object type situation. But I would say that, if you're one of those folks who thinks you have 4 different ideas or 4 different thoughts about a business, take more time, take the time that you need. to figure out which one makes the most sense for you to go. When I was thinking about if I wanted to focus on franchise law, that wasn't the only area I was looking at. There were two areas I was looking at, and they're totally unrelated. One was franchise law, and the other was elder care or senior care law. In other words, I was really contemplating if my niche was going to be franchise law or going into, elder care, and my thinking on it back at the time was, okay, both are good niches. If you look at senior care, that's a market that's growing and growing and growing, and you're never going to run out of people. There's also a lot of things you can do for people to help them prepare for the later years in their life, and there's an element of satisfaction on the human side of doing it. And then on the franchise side of things, I thought, well, you know, that's a niche where, it's a niche within small business. I love entrepreneurs. You're helping people grow and realize their dreams, all these sorts of things. And at the end of the day, my testing out, as I said earlier, really is what led to me just making the decision like, okay, I'm going the franchise route. I also happen to have randomly worked before I went to law school. Between undergrad and law school, I worked for 5 years. And for 2.5 of those years, I worked for two different franchise systems, having no clue that would be what I would, specialize my practice in or focus my practice in down the road. No clue, zero, none. I had no clue of that. But when I was thinking about when I wanted to niche, I did think back to, oh, I worked in franchises from a business perspective. So all those things together kind of led me to making the decision. But I was very flexible once I made that decision. I thought, I'm going to give this a chance. I'm going to give this, a year. I had sort of a plan in place. And I thought, if it doesn't materialize, no harm. I'll tweak. I'll change. I'll maybe go back to considering elder care. But fortunately for me, it didn't. It worked out, and has worked out. But I say that story to say, like, yeah, I mean, those are two very different areas. And I was really, really, I mean, on certain days I was like, I'm going elder care, and here's why. But ultimately, I went through the same analysis we're telling people to do today, which is sit with it, be with it. Don't rush yourself into that decision. And then if you do make the decision, go all in on that decision for a period of time.
Yeah, and I did the same thing with the trademark practice about 8 months ago, where I said, I was doing all sorts of different things for small businesses, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to focus and now just do trademarks. We're only a trademark law firm. We do some other things here and there, and that happens, right? They're all ancillary to that, but the priority is the trademark. So I think that's anyone who's listening who's thinking, what should I be doing? And you're weighing 2 or 3 different ideas, just pick one and go with the one.
You can always expand. Right? You can always, and you often do. I mean, and people are smart too. I focus on franchise law, and it's pretty much all I do, but people call me on other things that are related to it as well. And then I get to decide, hey, do I want to take that? Do I not want to take that? People are smart. People figure those things out, and you can always expand, but it's much better. I can't tell you how fervently I believe this, that I'd rather go a mile deep and an inch wide than an inch deep and a mile wide. I really would. I think that in this world that we live in right now, where information is so readily available, you've got all the stuff going on with AI, and where everything's going, which is exciting and scary at the same time. When you start diving into an area, whatever your area is, whatever your business is, if you're really, really good at it, if you're excellent at it, then people can't ignore you. In other words, if there's a market demand for it and you're really, really good at it, you will get noticed. People will find you. You will stick out. It just will happen. But it's the people who just don't do that, who don't believe in it enough, and just kind of, touch on the surface of it, and then they're doing 50 different things, and none of them they're doing well. And so it's easy to say this. We've done this. You and I have done this, and I can tell you it's very rewarding. But it takes discipline too. It takes discipline to be able to really hone in on one thing and go really, really deep, differentiate yourself. But I promise you, even in this world where there's a million distractions, people want to work with people who they believe are credible and are excellent at what they do and can really help them out. That hasn't changed.
I want to pivot a little bit to something you were talking about earlier in our conversation. And I think this will be really helpful for people who are building this online business and thinking, oh, this franchising thing, that sounds like something maybe I want to look at some point. But then there's another path, right? And and especially when when you're talking about intellectual property and why it's important to own all your intellectual property, and that's the licensing route. And so, especially people who are building, online brands, personal brands. You've got people like I'm trying to think of an example, like Mike Michalowicz with his Profit First system, and he's licensing, and that's not a franchise. That's I think that what he's doing is he's licensing the brand to other people to use it, or people like Brendan Bouchard, who is creating systems so that he can train people to be coaches. How should people be looking at this distinction between franchising and licensing? And are there certain businesses that are better suited for one or the other, or is it more dependent on the person and what they're trying to do? Or how do you talk to, I'm sure this question comes up from time to time in your practice. How do you talk to people about that?
Comes up all the time. And I work with several of my clients are licensed brands that I help avoid becoming a franchise, because whether or not you call yourself a franchise under the federal regulations and state regulations, if you walk like a franchise, talk like a franchise, if you meet the elements of a franchise, you're a franchise. And at the end of the day, essentially the three elements of an actual franchise, which I call a super license, right, is you're utilizing somebody else's brand, you're paying them money for the use of that brand, and you're providing them a significant amount of marketing and operating support. I mean, that's really, in a nutshell. It's obviously more complicated than that, but in a nutshell, those are the three main things that make up a franchise. If you want to be a license structure and not a franchise, you simply have to avoid one of those three elements. Well, if you're a licensing structure, you better get paid for it, or why are you doing it? So you're not going to avoid that element. If you're a licensing structure, usually the brand's important, but not always, right? Usually it's your name that's important or something like that. And so then it leaves you to the third element of the control of the marketing and the operations and so forth. And so that's a deep dive analysis that we can't even go into on this, because there's so many factors that play into it. But when you're talking about a licensing structure, that's often what these folks are doing, like, Brendan Bouchard and the others, Michael Michalowicz and so forth, is, they're basically taking, in their case, they're taking a system that they've created, that they've branded, and they're licensing its use to other companies that are then using it within their business, but they're not controlling their businesses. And so that's the big distinction between a franchise and a license. Now, whether one's right or wrong, it all depends on the business. I've worked with several licensing structures that have grown significantly to thousands of licensees across the United States and beyond, across the world, and have done very, very well, and they continue to do well. But sometimes people who have these licensing structures over time think they want to have more control over that system. And if you want to have more control over the marketing, over the operations, over everything like that, then you will need to convert yourself into a franchise system. Because in a franchise system, even though they are independently operated, there is a lot more control that the franchisor has versus in a pure licensor licensee situation. But it is easier to set up a licensor licensee situation than it is a franchise. So very often people will default to that structure first, and then sometimes realize, wow, really with where we're going or how things are going, we're going to be better off to be in a franchise system. But it's a very common question. And at the end of the day, because you have the various nuances, like with some of these coaching programs, it's a certification type model, right? Like you're going to be, I don't know if Brendan Bouchard is this, he might be at this point, but it's like John Maxwell or something like that, has like a coaching program where essentially there's other coaches who run their own business, and they have their own clients, and they run their business their own way. They're not doing it under some sort of, operational system, but they are, John Maxwell certified coaches or something like that. You could do that. That's an interesting licensing model that you see a lot of people online doing. But it takes that sort of name brand to get there, right? I mean, it takes the credentials of those type of folks to do that. It's a very detailed analysis, because it sounds so simple to say, here are the three elements and do you match up or do you not? But if you break it down a little bit, it's easy to know, are you paying money, right? That's obvious. It's easy to know, are you requiring them to use the brand? Okay, that's obvious. Are you trying to use their marks and so forth? The hard part is marketing and operations. How much control are you having? How much control are you not having? And I'm always amazed at usually people who want to stick with licensing and not go franchising you start talking to them and you find out, well, they actually want to have more control than they really think. It's like, well, I don't want to have any control. They can do anything they want, but they need to use my email and they need to do this and they can only market this way and they can only do this. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold the fort here. Hold the fort here. We're really getting into a lot of control here. And of course, there's law that's built up on that, in various jurisdictions. But sometimes there's not. And it's just sort of, you're having to look through and see, what kind of test this would pass for that kind of situation. But very common question, very common thing, a lot of confusion around licensing and franchising. But one thing I will say that if anything of what I said resonates, let this resonate. It doesn't matter if you call yourself a license. If you actually are a franchise, if you match up with those elements, you are subjected to the franchise regulations. You are subjected to those requirements. And if you are what's called an accidental franchise, meaning you're not trying to be a franchise, but you are, you're doing it illegally. And so, that's where you get into people contacting me and saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm not doing this illegally. I want to make sure that, I'm set up the right way. And people might say, well, why is that so important? Well, there's many reasons. Nobody really wants to have a legal business unless you're just that type of a person. But really, when you start a business, Jim, and this ties into really the overarching theme of everything we're talking about, you really should be thinking about the end game in mind. And the end game often is selling the business or somebody coming in and buying the business, whether it's an equity player or venture capital or just another individual or whatnot. And I can promise you this, they are going to do their due diligence and they're going to look into your structure and they're going to look into how you run that business. And if you've been operating it as a license and have gotten away with it for 15 years, and now you go to sell and you're trying to get a significant multiple and they do their due diligence and say, this is actually a franchise. Well, that's going to really upset that apple cart. And so there's a really important reason to me to really pay attention to that. And that is at the end of the day, you run a business to enjoy it, to make money, to give back to the community, and then in all likelihood to sell it at some point. And you really got to make sure that your structure is proper and you've got all these protections in place so that you don't wake up with somebody who makes an amazing offer to you just to find out that you don't have it set up the right way to sell.
So where they're either going to pull the offer or they're going to renegotiate the offer or something else. So I think the point of this and that I think people really need to be listening to is, regardless of if you're just starting out and you're just a solopreneur who's building your own little thing online, or if you are a larger organization, that's building up and starting to open multiple locations, the idea being that regardless of where you're at, it's really important that you do things right from the beginning. Because if you don't, sooner or later, and maybe it happens a year from now, maybe it happens 10 years from now, sooner or later, the shit's going to hit the fan if you don't do it right, and somebody's going to catch you. It's either going to be a disgruntled client that might sue you, or it's going to be the FTC or someone like that, the government that comes in and wants to look at what you're doing, or something's going to happen, and there's going to be a problem at some level. So it's important to get it done the correct way from the very beginning. All right. Well, Josh, I know we're up here on the top of the hour. I know your time is valuable. Why don't you share? Thank you so much, by the way, for being on today. Why don't you share a little bit about where people can find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, if they're thinking about franchising their business and they want to, have a chat with you? How can people reach you?
First of all, you can find the podcast Franchise Euphoria anywhere podcasts can be found. So just search Franchise Euphoria, you'll pull it up. If you want to reach out to me and have a chat or email me, just go to indyfranchiselaw.com. That's INDY franchiselaw.com. You'll be able to do it that way. I'm on Instagram under Franchise Law Brown. Generally speaking, you should be able to find me those ways and can get a hold of me. I routinely will do, 15-minute introductory type calls because oftentimes people don't know if they have a legal issue or not. I'm always happy to talk to people with that. And there's a contact form to fill out and or my assistant can help set that up. So I think if somebody, those are the best ways to reach me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate you being on today, and have a great weekend.
Keep up the great work. Thanks, Jim.
Well, thank you so much to Josh for being on the show today. It was a pure delight, and I'm sure most of you will agree with me that he is just a wealth of information. All right, all you Legal Jim listeners, now that you know more about franchising and licensing and the steps you need to take to make sure your business is legally legit and ready for growth, you are ready to take action and implement. Because if there's one thing that we love to do over here at the Legal Gym, it is to take massive action. So if you haven't already, make sure you check out the show notes page for today's episode. You can find a rundown of all the links and resources that we talked about here today by visiting hawthornelaw.net/Josh. And that's going to be the home base for all of your legal and business tools and resources to help you start, build, and of course, legally protect your very own online business. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.